What does this do? Do you believe?
Well, I believe that um we got a glimpse of it. It didn't hurt it. I think, opposite. It hurt it more than anything because the arrest and capture and their decision to cooperate, Ovidio's decision to cooperate, which practically most likely led to Joaquin Jr. cooperating, which led to the kidnapping and turning over one of the biggest drug lords, I think, um, ever. I think Mayo Zambada was a bigger drug lord than Pablo Escobar, than the Lord of the Skies, than any of the cartels because he was at at the throne for 50 years. Okay,
Yeah.
the fact that the United States government for decades was after him, and it shows what cooperation and wanting to save your ass could lead to, right? Where they kidnap the biggest drug lord in the world and bring them to the United States. And now, in today's present time, since the last time we spoke, you have dinosaurs. It's like the Jurassic Park of Mexican drug cartel heads, sitting in cages right now, doing anything they could do to try to get out. You have the leaders of the cartels, who, to me, I believe that if I had to decide on who deserved the death penalty, they'd be like the first in line. They
Really?
changed drug trafficking. I'm not only in Mexico, I think across Latin America with you know, their violence and their tactics. They're the ones that basically gave birth to the violence we see today. A lot of times, me being involved, the conversation was always that they were not brought up in the narco world like we were at one time, by generations, and because of that, because they came from a different culture, and then they were military trained, right? They were soldiers, had no mercy, and there were they took violence to another level, and now you have them in the U.S. courtroom, along with leaders of the Juarez cartel, Rafael Caro Quintero, who happens to be the most iconic drug lord, right? Um, and that's what cooperation does. So to me, it does do something. To me, we've been seeing it for the last year, the demise of the Sinaloa Cartel, and I believe that the Trump administration is doing a great job. Uh, I know that as of lately, it's kind of winding down a little bit in the media, but I believe that the government that's still at full force going after these drug cartels, and I don't believe that the Chapo faction or the Miles Zambada faction will outlast the next another year. Um,
Really?
um, Especially with some of the recent arrests, uh, to to the to the American public, some of these arrests that are happening might not be significant because they don't have a name. But just 2 days ago, you had one of the Cabrera brothers, who happens to be one of the most important fractions for the Miles Zambada organization. Um, uh, his organization, the Cabreras, which are from Durango, which uh, I actually dealt with the head of the Cabrera family. He was actually indicted and he's in prison in the U.S. On my case. Um, he was the first one to be arrested. Now you just had number two arrested in a couple of days ago. So all these arrests are meaning something, and I do believe it's the pressure of the United States that's actually making a difference, and it's going to continue to make a difference. Um, I could imagine that even today, right now, you have politicians, calling the government and saying, "Hey, you know, uh, is there a deal there for me?"
That's a wild thought, but I mean, as they're slowly starting to get broken down, I guess I could see the same. Um, you making that statement makes me feel that, do you believe that the Sinaloa cartel, Chapitos and CJ&G are slowly going to be dismantling a little bit more because of a lot of the higher ups being arrested? And what does that look like? Does that mean other cartels are going to start taking its place? Does the Sinaloa, is it going to be completely dismantled soon? Like, what are your thoughts on those?
I do believe that the government, the United States government and the Mexican government have already started basically, taking brick by brick apart was once considered the most powerful cartel in the world in Sinaloa. It's been happening, for the last 20 years. It took some time. I think that they have to be a little bit more aggressive right now while while it's hurting, while it's been not let them to get reorganized. But at the same time, you're gonna have people who were in those fractions are gonna basically just split and want to be a little bit more low key, and that word cartel for Sinaloa is gonna be like you know like something they're not going to want to speak about or even say. They would rather just be, organizations that have nothing to do with a larger scale cartel, which is going to just, basically I see it splinter into so many more, I'm talking maybe even dozens of drug trafficking organizations that are going to try to do different, try to stay away from violence, try to, be more under the radar. It's going to happen, I believe it's also going to happen with CJNG. It's just going to take a little bit more time because the focus has
Interesting.
been on Sinaloa for so many, for so many years. But I think that if the government continues to put this type of pressure on CJNG, I don't see it lasting, 2 years. I believe that if the Trump administration continues, that by the time the president's term is over with, the landscape in Mexico and drug cartels look very, very different. Yeah.
That's crazy to think. Well, to hear that from you is interesting because I mean, we do believe you're one of the most well educated and experienced and legit individuals who have worked in the highest regard of the cartels. And so it's interesting to think that the violence that the cartel has taken, right? The route they take with being very violent and being almost terrorist ways of simulating some of the ISIS maneuvers and killing people and whatnot. You believe that there's going to be a pivot where the violence almost stops and it becomes purely business focused.
Yeah, absolutely. What I see is, me being involved. I was involved in these type of splinters. Okay, a lot of it's personal emotion, personal anger, and for a fraction like the Chapillos say in Sinaloa, and a fraction like the Mayitos, right? Which the head is El Mayo Flaco, who I've known personally. It, the hatred of betrayal, and they have nothing to lose anymore. They've seen the rest of their families. They know what's coming to them firsthand. I believe that it's like, you know there's no rules anymore. It's I'm gonna outdo you, and that's what you're seeing because they more than anyone understand the position they're in of their demise. I believe so. So it's basically survival of the fittest, right? We can't let you know that cartel outdo us, and you're seeing it, and we're seeing it live because of social media, because of the media's interest in it. But in terms of drug trafficking, the people that just wanna that have nothing to do with that, that are seeing two families, right, going at war. That's the people who are in the business that look at this as it's really bad for business. Okay, you have the United States government, putting a big old target on these organizations. They don't want to be a part of that. They don't want to end up in American prisons, and they're going to try to move away from that. And there's nothing more than that could make peace among other people than money to see, look what's going on there. We don't want that. Like this is where other organizations kind of will try to work something out with a peace, or basically, you know, be involved in drug trafficking without having a militia, an army.